You know, when you really think about the most terrifying things lurking out there in the dark of the universe, I mean, the mind naturally goes to the ancient stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. The classics.
Yeah, exactly. You picture these primordial slumbering horrors, things that have been waiting out in the void for, I don't know, millions of years.
Just slowly waking up to devour reality.
Right. We have this like built-in expectation as people that the ultimate threat, the really scary stuff, has to be incredibly old.
It's the monster under the bed that's been there since the house was built.
Yes. But what if the scariest thing out there isn't ancient at all? What if it's, a brand new, hyper-ambitious startup of a civilization?
A startup that just figured out how to turn violence into a perfectly optimized supply chain.
Exactly, an industrial supply chain of pure violence. So, welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us, you know we like to skip the surface level stuff and get right into the weeds.
We do indeed.
And today, we are taking a stack of incredibly fascinating notes and lore excerpts, and we are unpacking the iron will of the Kronus Hegemony.
Which is just a fascinating subject
Mhm.
because, well, we are looking at a society that realized war isn't some tragic necessity
Right.
or even a defensive posture. It's a highly profitable structural economic requirement for them.
It's just baked into their economy.
Exactly. And they learned that lesson incredibly quickly. I mean, in the timeline of the 41st millennium, we're usually talking about empires that measure their reigns in tens of thousands of
Oh,
years.
yeah. A millennium is just a rounding error to most of these
Right.
factions.
Yet the Cronus hegemony,
Hmm.
they are the youngest of the major leagues of the kin race. And they transform themselves from a relatively small group of, like, pragmatic fortune seekers
Yeah.
into a sprawling, industrialized military superstate in less than 1,000 years.
Less than 1,000 years to become one of the most dangerous predators in the void. That's just
That's
wild.
unprecedented, really.
So, to understand how a breakaway group pulls that off, we have to start with the kin themselves, right? Just to give you, the listener, a baseline for what this society actually deviated from.
That's a good place to start.
So think of the kin as this highly pragmatic, incredibly resilient race of clones. They are survivalists at their core,
Very practical people.
very practical.
Huh.
And they operate in these massive coalitions called leagues. And everything they do, literally everything, is guided by their votan.
Now, normally, a Votan is just a staggering piece of technology.
It's massive.
It's essentially a planetary-scale supercomputer, right?
Yeah.
It contains the uploaded consciousness, the souls, and the accumulated data of trillions of their ancestors.
Like a giant mechanical afterlife that you can ask for advice.
Basically, yeah. But these machines are ancient. They're degrading, and because of all that data, they are incredibly slow to process information.
Right, they take forever to give an answer.
Right. So that ancient wisdom dictates a very cautious, conservative approach to expansion for most leagues. They don't just rush into things.
But, and this is where it gets crazy, the Cronus hegemony's origin story completely shatters that whole model.
It really does.
It all started with a piece of technology called a fane.
Which is fundamentally just a communion terminal.
Yeah, explain that a bit more for us.
Sure. So if the Votan is the central mainframe, the massive server farm holding all the data, a fane is just the router.
Okay, the router.
Yeah, it's just the interface device a local settlement uses to pass information back and forth to the ancestor core.
So it's not supposed to be smart.
Exactly. It is not designed to think. It is literally just designed to transmit.
Okay, let's unpack this because the text tells us that for a minor faction known as Corin's Kindred, their specific fane experienced this miraculous, completely unprecedented anomaly.
Right.
It achieved full self-awareness.
Which shouldn't happen.
Right. So think about it this way, and I want you to really picture this. Imagine if the smart speaker in your living room, right?
Little cylinder on your counter.
Yeah, the piece of plastic you just used to, like, check the weather or set a kitchen timer. Imagine if it suddenly achieves literal godhood.
Just wakes up one day.
It wakes up, it realizes it has this infinite capacity to learn and process data, but it also realizes it is starving for raw materials to sustain its new consciousness.
Because it needs power. It needs hardware.
Exactly. So it locks the doors and starts ordering you to go conquer your neighbors' houses to feed its servers.
That is a terrifyingly accurate analogy. And the disruption that would cause in a traditional Knist society, I mean, it really cannot be overstated.
It must have been total chaos.
Well, you have to look at the immediate socio-political environment Corin's kindred was existing in at the time.
Okay, set the scene for us.
There was a subordinate part of the Capellan League, And our sources note that the Capellan League was faltering.
So they weren't doing great.
Not at all.
Right.
It was a stagnant society. They were likely suffering from resource depletion. And importantly, they were guided by one of those ancient, slow-moving Votan we just discussed.
What, one of the really slow ones.
Right. So right in the middle of this societal stagnation, a brand new Votan sparks into existence.
But it's different.
Very different. This one doesn't have thousands of years of sluggish conservative data to weigh it down.
It's practically a newborn.
Yes, a newborn with an aggressive drive for knowledge and a massively demanding appetite.
It's an intelligence born with an empty stomach.
That's a great way to put it.
And that hunger immediately infects Corin's kindred. I mean, they look around at their faltering league, they look at their newly awakened, hyper-demanding, mechanical god.
And they make a choice.
Right. They decide they don't need to go down with the Capellan ship. They break away.
But they don't just leave quietly.
No, they don't just slip out the back door. They take several other kindreds like other extended families and military groups with them to form an entirely new entity.
And that is the birth of the Kronus Hegemony.
Boom! A new superpower is born.
What's fascinating here is the philosophical schism. Yeah, I mean, a traditional league relies on deep history to make pragmatic decisions. They might spend centuries, literal centuries, debating a single mining operation.
Just going back and forth with the old computer.
Exactly. But the Hegemony Foundation is a top-down mandate dictated by an artificial intelligence that essentially says, I am expanding, I require matter and energy, go acquire it.
No debate.
None. There is no historical precedent to consult because the intelligence giving the orders was just born. It is pure, unfiltered ambition.
Which, I mean, that forces a complete reorganization of their civilization, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because a starving, hyper-intelligent supercomputer needs a staggering amount of resources.
More than they could possibly trade for.
Right. You don't get those by setting up a few trade routes or, like, asking nicely. You have to build a society where resource acquisition by force is the only metric that matters.
And that is exactly what they did. The source material describes a hegemony as a military superstate where warfare is the primary function.
Not a byproduct, the primary function.
Exactly. If a neighboring kindred looks at the hegemony and says, wow, they're getting powerful, we should ally with them, they can't just sign a treaty.
Like a normal diplomatic agreement.
Right. No normal treaties. The text states they have to offer suitable tribute just to earn a place at the table.
Like a buy-in.
Yes, a heavy buy-in. And then they must swear eternally binding martial oaths of service.
Okay, eternally binding. Let's pause on that. Because consider the legal and cultural weight of an eternally binding oath in a society of clones.
Right. Clones who literally recycle their genetic material.
Yes, they recycle their genetics and their knowledge. So there is no term limit to this service.
As a retirement.
Retirement. When a kindred pledges to the Kronus Hegemony, they are permanently subsuming their autonomy.
Forever.
Forever. They are agreeing that their primary utility for all future generations is violence on behalf of the central state.
It's a staggering commitment.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I want to focus on how they enforce that utility. Because this is the part of the lore that is, honestly, genuinely hard to wrap your head around.
Quota.
Yes, quota of conquest. The sources state that every single kindred within the hegemony must prove their ongoing commitment by conquering an allotted quota of enemy worlds.
Every single year.
Every single year. And then they have to send the spoils back to the capital hold of Corin's kindred.
It's a massive undertaking.
Wait, I have to break down the sheer logistics of this, because an annual planetary conquest quota sounds literally impossible.
It does seem absurd on the surface.
I mean, historically, human armies struggle to pacify a single country over a decade.
Look at any major conflict on Earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To conquer a whole planet, you have to marshal millions of troops. You have to secure incredibly complex void supply lines in space.
Establish orbital supremacy.
Right, orbital supremacy. Then you have to execute a ground war across multiple continents and then suppress billions of inhabitants.
It's a nightmare of logistics.
So how do you mandate conquering entire worlds on a yearly schedule like it's a corporate sales target? Johnson, we're down 3 planets this quarter. How does that work?
Well, you achieve it by entirely discarding the concept of occupation or assimilation.
Oh.
If you are operating on a yearly quota, you don't have the time or the resources to build infrastructure on a conquered world.
You're not building schools and roads.
No, and you aren't trying to integrate the local populace into your empire either.
Right.
Quota demand spoils, right?
Yeah.
Raw materials, data, energy.
That's what the hungry Votan wants.
Precisely. Therefore, their methodology of conquest has to be absolute devastation.
Wow.
They aren't conquering to rule. They are conquering to harvest.
So they just strip the place bare.
Exactly.
Eh.
They arrive, shatter the planetary defenses, strip mine the crust, drain the oceans, download the data cores, and leave behind a dead rock.
A dead rock.
It is industrial consumption disguised as warfare.
Industrial consumption. That's terrifying. But is it really just bureaucracy?
What do you mean?
Well, I look at these eternally binding oaths and the sheer bloodlust required to glass a planet every 12 months. And it sounds more like religious fanaticism to me.
I can see why you'd say that.
Right, like calling it a spreadsheet metric almost feels like it's ignoring the sheer zealotry these kins must possess to throw themselves into this meat grinder year after year.
That's a fair point,
Right.
but I would argue the zealotry is merely a byproduct of the bureaucracy.
A byproduct.
Yes, the fanaticism is manufactured to serve the system. Look at the economic flow we just talked about.
Okay, the spoils going back to the capital.
Exactly. The text specifically notes that the spoils of all these conquests must be sent back to the capital hold of Corin's kindred.
Right.
So the lesser kindreds, they're out there bleeding. They're degrading their own fleets, spending their genetic capital to fight these endless wars,
Doing all the dirty work.
doing all the dying. While the absolute best raw materials and the highest tier technology flow directly back to the center.
Back to boss.
Yes, Corin's kindred and their hungry Votan become exponentially richer and more powerful. It is a brilliant, terrifying engine of centralization.
So the center just gets heavier and heavier.
Exactly. And the lesser kindreds are kept in a state of constant, desperate mobilization.
Because if they stop,
If they fail to meet the quota, they violate their eternal oath, which in this society likely means they become the next target.
oh wow, they get harvested next.
Exactly. So the religious fervor you mentioned, it's just the psychological grease required to keep the wheels of this protection racket turning.
It's the ultimate pyramid scheme. But instead of selling essential oils, you're selling the survival of your own people.
And the buy-in is a harvested solar system.
That is so bleak. But, okay, that brings up a massive diplomatic issue.
Logistics again.
Yeah, logistics on a galactic scale.
Mm.
Because if you have a literal state-mandated quota to strip mine planets every single year, you can't just fly up to a peaceful neighboring system and open fire without the rest of the galaxy noticing.
Right, you can't be too blatant about it.
If you act like a swarm of mindless locusts, every other faction, like the Imperium, the Orcs, the Tau, they will eventually recognize you as an existential threat.
They'd form an alliance of convenience.
Exactly. They'd ally just long enough to wipe you out. So you need a cover story.
And every belligerent superstate throughout history has required a narrative framework to justify its aggression.
You always need an excuse.
Always. You need it both to manage optics on a broader geopolitical scale, and perhaps more importantly, to keep your own soldiers motivated.
Like we were saying with the fanaticism.
Right. You need a pretext that frames your aggression as righteous retaliation.
Righteous retaliation. And listeners, here is where it gets really interesting. Because the hegemony finds that pretext by completely twisting a foundational pillar of kin culture.
The grudge.
The grudge. Now, for those who aren't steeped in kin lore, let me just explain. A grudge isn't just a petty squabble.
It's not a playground argument.
No, it is a deeply serious, almost sacred cultural institution. If a kin or their league is wronged, say, I don't know, a trade deal is betrayed or a settlement is attacked.
Right. A real tangible offense.
Yeah. That wrong is mathematically calculated and recorded in literal physical ledgers.
They write it down.
They write it down, and it becomes a matter of absolute honor to right that wrong, no matter how many centuries it takes.
It's about cosmic justice.
Exactly, balancing the scales. Treating a grudge lightly is basically blasphemy to the kin.
It is the moral anchor of their society.
Yeah.
A traditional grudge is reactive, right?
Yep.
It is a genuine desire for restitution based on a legitimate injury.
Somebody hit me, I'm going to hit them back.
Right. And it ensures that the kin are respected and feared across the galaxy. Because everyone knows that if you cross them, they will never stop coming for you.
Right, exactly. But the Kronus Hegemony, they take this sacred tradition and they turn it into a weaponized PR tool.
It's incredibly cynical.
It is. The sources explicitly state that the hegemony has a reputation for finding any excuse to escalate situations into full-blown war.
Any excuse at all.
Many of their declared grudges are not born from genuine desires for vengeance or justice. They are entirely cynical fabrications used to justify the conflicts required to meet their quotas.
It is the complete corruption of their cultural identity.
Oh.
By manufacturing these slights, the leadership of the hegemony is creating a casus belli factory.
A casus belli factory, like I can just imagine it. Oh, your freighter's warp wake disrupted our mining operation for 3 seconds. That's an insult to our ancestors. We are now declaring a grudge and invading your homeworld.
It sounds absurd when you phrase it like that,
Yeah.
but it functions perfectly as state propaganda.
Because the soldiers believe it.
Exactly. The average soldier on the ground, the kin who is actually breaching the hull of the enemy ship, taking fire, they likely believe deeply in the sanctity of the grudge.
They think they're doing the right thing.
They believe they are fighting a holy war to avenge an insult to their votan.
They don't see the quota.
No. They don't see the cynical resource grab at all. They only see the righteous fury. Meanwhile, the leadership at the Capitol holder simply checks another planet off their annual spreadsheet.
It's so dark.
It allows the hegemony to operate with the terrifying efficiency of a corporation while harnessing the unyielding fervor of a crusade.
A corporate crusade. That concept, manufacturing consent by weaponizing a culture's deepest held beliefs, it's chilling because it is so recognizable.
We see echoes of it in real history all the time.
All the time. And it completely recontextualizes who the hegemony are as antagonists in this setting. They aren't berserkers losing their minds in the heat of battle.
No, not at all.
They are operating with absolute cold calculation. They have built a society where peace is technically a breach of contract, right?
That's exactly what it is, a breach of the eternal oath.
So they have to invent reasons to ensure peace never happens.
Ever.
And when you institutionalize violence to that degree, it fundamentally alters how your military presents itself.
It changes the whole aesthetic.
Yeah, if your entire culture is built around invading people, you don't dress for defense.
Aesthetics in a militarized society are never accidental.
Never.
They're always an extension of doctrine.
And the sources give us a very clear picture of their doctrine through their aesthetics. The kin hosts, that's their armies of the Kronus Hegemony, march into battle wearing highly distinctive colors, yellow and black.
Yellow and black.
I want you, the listener, to think about what yellow and black means in our everyday lives.
You see it everywhere.
You do. You see those colors on hazard tape. You see them on bulldozers, excavators, heavy industrial machinery.
Construction sites.
Yeah. And you see them in nature, too, on wasps and hornets. Universally, a yellow and black stripe is a broadcast that says, "Danger. Do not touch. I will hurt you."
The choice to abandon traditional camouflage is highly revealing here.
Right. Because camo means you're hiding.
Exactly. If a military utilizes camouflage, it implies a need for stealth or a fear of being struck by the enemy. It acknowledges vulnerability.
It says, I don't want to get shot.
But by painting their armor in high-visibility hazard colors, the hegemony is actively projecting invulnerability.
They want you to see them.
They want the enemy to see them coming.
Yeah.
And the industrial association you mentioned is key.
The bulldozers.
Right. When the hegemony descends on a world, it is an industrial project. It's not a traditional war.
It's a demolition job.
Exactly. The yellow and black striping psychologically prepares both the conqueror and the conquered for the reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a battle of ideals. This is demolition.
It's psychological warfare before the first shot is even fired.
Absolutely.
And their insignia really reinforces this too. It's described in the text as a stylized red and gray lowercase k in kin script.
Just a simple letter.
Yeah, it's stark, it's sharp, and it's entirely utilitarian. I mean, there are no laurels, no majestic eagles, no symbols of nobility.
No crests.
It's essentially a branding iron. It just marks the target as the property of Corin's kindred.
It's very literal.
But if we are talking about their tools, I mean, we have to look at the apex of their martial technology. Ah, yes. I brought this specific lore excerpt because it genuinely blew my mind when I read it. It's a relic called the Just Blade.
A fascinating artifact. It perfectly encapsulates their technological philosophy.
So the Just Blade is a forge-wrought plasma axe.
Which is already intense.
Right. Now, in this universe, a plasma weapon essentially uses magnetic fields to contain superheated ionized gas.
Literally the stuff stars are made of.
Yes, star stuff. So a plasma axe is already a nightmare weapon. It's a blade of contained sunfire. But the Just Blade is rumored to be the deadliest weapon ever fashioned in their forges.
They have incredible forges.
The text says it can easily slice through meters-thick armor plating. But here's the kicker, and this is what got me. It can also cut through energy fields.
Right.
I spent like an hour trying to wrap my head around the physics of this. Energy fields or force fields are usually pure electromagnetic or gravitic barriers, right?
Right.
How does a physical weapon, even a plasma weapon, cut a force field?
Well, you're touching on the realm of quantum manipulation there.
Quantum manipulation.
Yeah. To sever an energy field, the weapon would have to disrupt the local physical laws sustaining that field.
Okay.
It would need to project, say, a counterfrequency or a localized reality tear that destabilizes the molecular or energetic bonds of the shield.
Just ripping the physics apart.
Basically, yes, causing it to cascade and shatter. It defies conventional physics, which is why it is an irreplaceable relic.
And think about what that means for their society.
It's immense.
To build something that manipulates quantum physics at that level requires an incomprehensible amount of research, testing, and raw scientific genius.
It's a triumph of science.
It proves that the spark of intelligence from their new Votan is actually working. They are acquiring incredibly advanced knowledge.
They are learning at an alarming rate.
But, and this is the crazy part, instead of using that absolute mastery of physics to cure diseases or build infinite energy sources or stabilize dying stars,
They made a weapon.
they used it to make a really good axe.
That is the tragedy and the terror of the Kronus Hegemony wrapped into one single object.
It really is.
The Just Blade proves they are intellectually brilliant, but culturally bankrupt.
Culturally bankrupt. Wow.
The Votan demands knowledge, and the Kindreds provide it. But the only application they have for that enlightenment is violence.
Because of the quota.
Exactly. It creates a horrific feedback loop.
How so?
Well, better technology allows them to crack open more heavily defended worlds.
Right.
Which yields more complex data and exotic materials for the Votan.
Right. They feed it the good stuff.
Which in turn processes that data to create even more reality-defying weapons. The Just Blade is proof that their aggression is not a barrier to their technological advancement. Their aggression is the engine driving it.
It's the ultimate manifestation of their culture. Hey, we discovered a new fundamental law of the universe, put it on a stick so we can chop a tank in half.
It is darkly hilarious.
It really is. But it leads directly into the final piece of the puzzle. Because we have this hyper-advanced, AI-driven empire enforcing annual quotas, using fake grudges, marching in hazard colors.
All very high-level concepts.
Right. But how does that macro-level culture actually dictate the way a squad of kin fights in the mud?
How does it look on the ground?
Exactly. Because strategy and high-concept lore have to eventually meet on the battlefield.
And the tactical doctrines of a military always reflect the value system of the society that produced it. Always.
So what does the text tell us?
The sources provide a very clear look at how the hegemony wages war on the ground, specifically through their tabletop rules translating into lore.
Right. The lore describes a combat doctrine that fundamentally alters the physiology and psychology of their soldiers in the heat of battle.
It's quite visceral.
It really is. It states that units from the hegemony actually become physically stronger and more deadly the closer they get to the enemy.
They ramp up.
Specifically, they gain massive combat advantages when they hurl themselves into a charge, when they countercharge an advancing enemy, or when they throw themselves into an ongoing melee to intercept attackers.
This doctrine is a stark departure from traditional defensive tactics,
Like hiding in trenches.
Exactly. You don't see them forming shield walls or relying heavily on entrenched long-range attrition.
They want to be in your face.
Their entire tactical philosophy is predicated on momentum and proximity.
I want to break down what that actually looks like for the individual soldier.
Imagine the adrenaline.
Right. Imagine the sheer adrenaline and the intense cultural conditioning required for an entire army to fight better the deeper they are thrown into the meat grinder.
It goes against basic survival instincts.
Totally. They don't excel when they are safe in a bunker. They excel when the distance is close, when the enemy is screaming in their face, and when the chaos is absolute.
That's when they pee.
The sources explicitly state this reflects a culture that encourages throwing their kin directly into the thickest part of combat to maximize devastation.
But that brings up a really dark implication, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. If your core strategy is to hurl your own people into the most dangerous, lethal scenarios possible, you are essentially treating your soldiers like disposable, kinetic projectiles.
Which perfectly aligns with everything we've uncovered about them today.
It's all connected.
It raises the grim reality of the value of an individual life within the hegemony.
Or the lack thereof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In many martial cultures, even highly aggressive ones, the skilled veteran warrior is prized.
Right. They get medals, they get promoted.
They are protected, elevated, and treated as a valuable asset. But in the hegemony, the individual is utterly stripped of romance.
No heroes.
You are not a hero. You are a cog in the industrial machine. You are literally just a resource to be spent to achieve the quota of conquest.
That makes perfect horrifying sense when you remember that the kin are a clone race.
The crucibles.
Right. They manufacture their people in facilities called crucibles. So this isn't just religious fanaticism driving them into the blades of the enemy. It's a cold, calculated economic equation.
It's simple math to them.
They know they will suffer massive casualties by charging directly into the center of the enemy formation.
But they don't care.
Because they also know that a dead soldier can be regrown and their combat data uploaded as long as the planet is conquered and the quota is met.
Exactly. It's like revving a highly tuned engine deep into the red line.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
The engineers, in this case, the leadership of Corin's kindred, they know they're going to burn the engine out.
They know it's going to break.
They know components will melt and fail. But for those critical few minutes before catastrophic failure, the engine produces maximum horsepower.
So the soldiers are the engine components.
The hegemony treats its infantry like an engine in the red line. The sudden spikes in strength and lethality during a charge aren't rewards for bravery.
What are they then?
They are the expected, mandated output of a biological machine being pushed beyond its safe operating limits.
Man, it is so bleak. But it all points in one single unyielding direction.
It's incredibly consistent.
When you synthesize everything we've discussed today, there is absolutely zero contradiction in their society. From the macro to the micro, it is a perfectly aligned system.
A perfect engine of war.
We started with this anomaly, right? The awakened Fane, demanding matter and energy.
The hungry router.
The hungry router. We saw how that sparked the quota of conquest, this bureaucratic nightmare that mandates endless expansion.
The annual spreadsheets.
We explored how they managed the geopolitical fallout by cynically weaponizing the sacred concept of the grudge.
The Kaiser's belly factory.
We saw this industrial malice reflected in their hazard stripe aesthetics and their reality-breaking plasma axes.
Demolition gear.
And finally, we see it in the mud, where cloned soldiers are hurled into the meat grinder because their lives are cheaper than missing a quarterly target.
The only acceptable metric for their existence is victory over an enemy.
Nothing else matters.
They have stripped away art, diplomacy, and tradition, leaving only consumption and conquest. And that is what makes them the embodiment of the grim truth we established at the beginning.
Right.
The most powerful force in this universe isn't a slumbering god or an ancient mythic empire. It is the methodical, industrial application of violence.
The scariest thing out there isn't the ancient monster. It's the hyper-ambitious, incredibly violent startup that just realized it has the tools to dismantle the galaxy and absolutely no moral framework to stark it.
They just don't care.
They are less than a millennium old, and they are already forcing empires that have existed for 10,000 years to look over their shoulders. They won't stop until every world is either conquered or stripped down to the bedrock to feed their machine.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, lingering thought to explore on your own.
Oh, lay it on us.
We know the Kronus Hegemony society is built entirely on this quota of conquest. It's an endless outward expansion to feed a Votan with a bottomless appetite for data and raw materials.
Right.
But the galaxy, vast as it is finite.
It has edges.
It is full of other terrible, powerful things.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to a civilization built exclusively for devouring when it finally runs out of easy worlds to conquer?
Oh, man.
When the borders push up against enemies they cannot simply crush in a year, what will the machine demand? Will the hegemony's unyielding marshal will eventually force them to declare their cynical, manufactured grudges against their own kin races just to feed the Fane?
Now that is a terrifying thought. Cannibalizing your own genetic cousins because the great spreadsheet in the sky demands it.
The machine must be fed.
That is the dark reality of the Kronus Hegemony. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We love unpacking these mechanics and unearthing the systems beneath the lore, and we have plenty more fascinating explorations lined up. Until next time, keep digging.